right, welcome everyone. Welcome to our College and Power Hour on this lovely yet dreary Thursday evening. We're gonna have a lot of fun today. This is Jess from Achieve Miami. For those of you who are joining who might not be familiar with who we are and what we do, we're a nonprofit organization here in Miami that brings together students and educators from diverse backgrounds to provide educational programs that help all students learn and grow. We believe in the power of education and connection to enrich the not only individual lives of students, but also our communities as well. So all of our programs, everything from our music programs to our Achieve Saturdays to Achieve Venture Hours and this College and Power Hour series, all of those seek to not only inform and educate, but also to instill joy and build connection as well. So this particular College and Power Hour tonight, we're going to hear from Brianna Joseph and Marianne Firpo, both of which are program coordinators here at Engage Miami, about the importance, tongue twister, about the importance of being civically engaged, what being civically engaged can look like, upcoming elections, and so much more, including why it is so critical that young people make their voices heard. The topic of this College and Power Hour is of critical importance, and I can tell you as a voting rights activist myself, I am particularly excited about what we are going to talk about, but I'll save all of that for Brianna and Marianne. Really quick, for those of you who don't know me, I'll just give a quick introduction. I'm the manager of high school programs here at Achieve Miami. I work with our high school team to implement current and future high school programming. Part of that means ensuring high school students have all the information and resources they need to succeed on their college readiness journey and beyond. With that said, if you're not receiving the Don't Stop Achieving newsletter, please sign up to receive it. The link is on the left, and Tazi will be throwing that into the chat box for us as well. This newsletter features scholarship and award opportunities, standardized testing updates, so much helpful information in addition to announcements about upcoming College and Power Hours. So you want to be signed up to receive that. And also I want to encourage anyone to reach out to me. Always happy to talk with any of our high school students about things they're interested in doing and their college readiness journeys as well. So just a quick housekeeping. As you can tell, all lines are muted. Please feel free to continue chatting in the chat box. You're welcome to continue sharing there. Just make sure that you're sending your message to all attendees and panelists, not just all panelists. That way everyone can see your comments. You're also welcome to utilize the Q&A feature to ask questions at any time. Hey, Brianna. Whatever panelists just joined, to ask questions at any time. And we will be addressing those questions either during the webinar or at the end when we open it up for Q&A. So there will be an opportunity for you to have your question addressed. These presentation slides will be available in the follow-up email that we send all of you, as well as some various links that we'll be sharing throughout. And you'll also receive a recording of this presentation. So disclaimer, this webinar is being recorded. And very important, you must complete the follow-up survey in order to receive your 1 hour of community service. And the link to that survey will be available at the end of the webinar. It will also give you an opportunity to express interest in volunteering with Engage Miami in various ways that we're going to talk about today. We have a very exciting agenda. First, we're going to hear an intro from Engage Miami. Then we're going to hear a special message from Leslie Miller-Science, the founder and president of Achieve Miami. Then we're going to get into an icebreaker. We're going to have a little conversation. We're going to talk about upcoming elections and then close it off with how to take action. So I hope you're as excited as I am for this. And at this time, I would like to pass the mic over to Brianna and Marianne so they can introduce themselves, tell us a little bit about what Engage does, and give a quick overview of what we'll be talking about today.
All righty. So good afternoon, everyone. I'm so excited to be here with you all, to engage with you all, and to basically learn from you all as well and learn what questions you guys have so that I can do my work better as a program coordinator at Engage Miami. And so my name is Brianna Joseph. I go by she, her, hers pronouns, and I'm a program coordinator at Engage. Engage Miami is a local nonprofit that wants young people like us to use the power we have to build a better tomorrow for everyone in Miami-Dade County and South Florida. And so we aim to educate, activate, and elevate young people through civic engagement, through class presentations, through passing out materials to basically help close that gap that exists here in Miami-Dade County, because we know that a lot of young people, sometimes we do forget civics and forget, different topics that we're taught in middle school and high school. And so we're here to remind people and to remind young people and to basically help elevate you all to be change makers, to be leaders in the community, and to make a difference and create the Miami-Dade County and South Florida that we want and deserve. I'm gonna pass it to Marion so she could introduce herself.
Thank you so much, Bree. You spoke so beautifully. My name is Marion. I'm a program coordinator for Engage Miami. Our work is so wholly influenced by the community that we have here in Miami overall, and the little pockets of communities that exist within Miami. So it's really beautiful to be able to provide that learning and that achievement and that understanding of your own leadership to our younger generation, our little brothers and sisters and our younger cousins and stuff. It's really amazing, and I'm really, really glad to be here.
Awesome. Thanks for giving us that little intro. I can't wait to dive into this whole thing with you all. And before we do that, I think I want to pass the mic along to our founder and president, Leslie Miller-Seance. And I'll give a little bit of an introduction. Sorry, Leslie, I'm going to embarrass you a little bit here. But Leslie is not only the founder and president of Achieve Miami, she's also the chair of the advisory board for Teach for America Miami-Dade. She serves on the National Council. She's a Miami native, extremely passionate about her community, and she has 6 children, all of whom she is proud to say are outstanding civically engaged members of their community. So welcome, Leslie, if you want to introduce yourself and give a little brief message for our viewers.
Terrific. Can you hear me, Jess?
Yep.
Okay, great. Well, first of all, good afternoon, despite the rain. It is a beautiful afternoon, and I am very, very happy that we have so many attendees on what is a very, very important subject, civic engagement. Brianne, Marianne, great to hear your voices, and even more excited to hear what you have to say after my quick rah rah Miami speech. So I was born here, and I've always loved Miami, but I think what's most significant relative to what we're talking about today is my Miami of today is not the Miami from 60 plus years ago. And a lot of the way that Miami was formed, and some is still challenging, but there are a lot of great things about our city, was because different citizens, different activists decided to get involved. Yeah, we could think of people who brought the, Art Deco scene, people who changed a lot of the rules that existed that were not equitable for everyone here. But I also think about small things. My neighborhood. My neighborhood's a new neighborhood. And if I think about it, who decided to put in sidewalks, trees, who made sure that my public schools were great? It was different citizens that took it upon themselves to engage. Well, this is maybe not the citizens that this audience is, but especially for all of you who are young and fabulous, I can tell already. I know a lot of you are driving, or at least anticipating driving. I know a lot of you will be turning 18 and becoming adults. These are really, really big, big moments in your lives. I'd like to challenge you to say, as you listen today, and go ahead and with your life, that the ability, the power to use your voice and to engage is as important as anything else you'll do, especially when you really care about your community. And I just have to say that on behalf of myself and all of Achieve, I'm really glad you're all here. I'm excited as well to learn and God, take some notes and brag about what you've picked up from this and what you plan on doing afterwards. So thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Leslie. It was great to have you on this and to give that message. And if you don't mind, I'm going to bump you back as an attendee so that you
Please
can
do.
watch the College and Power Hour
Great.
in full form. All right, cool. Thank you, Tazi. Okay, so Brianna, Marian, I'm going to start sharing my screen again. We have a lot of really important and guiding questions. Everybody can see my screen, correct? Okay, great. We have a lot of important and guiding questions for our conversation today, and I'll just be throwing them out there for either one of you to, or both of you to address. And audience members, again, if you have any questions for us during this conversation, please put them in the Q&A box so that we can address them at the end. So, how did you get involved in this work as program coordinators for Engage?
All right. Oh, go ahead, Marian.
I was gonna say, go ahead, Bree, you first.
All right. So let's reel it back. So growing up in Liberty City, Miami, I didn't have the experience of most children. I didn't know the kids on my block. I didn't go to school or summer camp in my area. And one of the main questions that I always asked my parents were, hey, why don't I go to school in the area, walk home after school like the kids I see on TV? And the older I got, I realized that it's because of the way that, Miami-Dade County is structured and the systems against me. And so one of my most vivid memories actually growing up as a kid was waking up before dawn. I would get to school around 5:45 in the morning. I would actually be there before the principal and oftentimes the custodians and janitors. And they would ask me, why are you here so early in the morning, Bree? And I would have to explain to them that, my parents worked really hard for me to get into a magnet school because the schools in my area didn't have the best education. And so I'm here because it takes 30 minutes for me to commute to get here. And it takes another hour for my parents to get to school after they drop me off. And so, I would spend the mornings with the janitors or with the principal. And so that's one of the most vivid memories for me. And I realized, the reasons why my parents did not allow me to go to school in this area is because of gun violence, because of police brutality that exists in this neighborhood, as well as the fact that, the quality of education wasn't the best. And so me being a first generation American, they wanted to make sure that I got all of the best resources that they could get me. But I missed out on birthday parties, on sleepovers, on friendships, because all of my friends were far enough away that my parents weren't able to, include me in everything. And so the older I got, I finally got to college and I started having conversations with people from similar experiences and backgrounds. And it ignited the fire in me once I realized, systemic inequality is the reason why people like me from certain areas might feel like outcasts, like we don't really belong in our neighborhood or in the place that we go to school. And, it infuriated me, but it also ignited that fire. And after college, I was lucky enough to find an awesome organization called Engage Miami that works to break down these inequalities and works to create a Miami-Dade County that is accessible, that's just, and that, really is made for everyone. And so that's pretty much my story. I'm here. I've been working at Engage for the past 2 years. I've learned how to navigate these systems, how to organize and how to advocate on behalf of young people, and how to bring other young people together to do the same, because we are powerful. And once we use our collective voice and our collective power, we truly can make a difference as young people in Miami-Dade County. All right, passing it to Marian.
Thank you, Bree. You're so amazing. So my story. Like Bree, I was kind of a fish out of water. Born and raised in Hialeah, super Hialeah, not human, which is already like a big difference for most people there. I grew up in a very strict household that was very, that prioritized education beyond what was offered to me. I had offers every single year to go to different magnet schools all across the county, and my parents could never actually, one, afford it, or two, take the time out of their lives to get me over there and then bring me all the way back. So I never had any sort of experiences like that. Ultimately, it ended up with me growing up thinking like, I don't fit in here, I need to get out. And once I went to college, I actually went to Pensacola as far as I could in state, and I ended up getting ridiculously, insanely ill. I did not have health insurance. No one in my family had had health insurance throughout my entire life, and Obamacare didn't exist then. And it was right when the housing crisis was like the most crippling. So I'm on the other side of the state. My brother is living in Atlanta going to school, and my parents are in Miami struggling to keep their house, just barely hanging on to it. And then I had a medical crisis that because I didn't have health insurance, I couldn't get the care that I needed for it. Ultimately, I ended up having to move back down here. It worked out for the best because I discovered applied behavior analysis. So I worked with children for about 10 years, children with autism for 5 years. And while I was working with children with autism, I found such an incredible community. I thought, Miami's got communities too. I started to seek out, I love arts, music, culture. So I started to seek out cultural outlets within Miami, and I discovered that our schools were pretty underfunded in regards to arts and different kinds of, we're all just learning science, math, and English. We're missing so much more sometimes in our classrooms that I felt so intensely motivated to just make change. I noticed that the children with autism that I was working with were falling through some systemic cracks. I noticed that our educational system had really deep cracks in it too. I noticed that our medical system had people slipping through the cracks as well. So I thought, all right, this is my time and I got to do this. And I joined Engage to be able to make that change and make sure that young people all over Miami-Dade County are not only voting, but voting with their best thinking hats on.
I love the thinking hat metaphor. There are people saying thank you for sharing in the chat box. And again, I'll echo that. Thank you for sharing. Why is this work so important? And this work can mean your work. It can mean the work of being civically engaged in a multitude of ways. But why is this work so important, and especially for young people?
All right. So something that I learned working at Engage that made so much sense once I learned it was that young people, we're the biggest generation so far. We are the biggest generation so far. So we have a lot of power in people when it comes to taking the steps to be civically engaged and to make an impact. If we really collaborate and get together, we can make a difference, whether it's voting. If we turn out at the same rate that older folks do, we'd win almost every single time just based on numbers. And for people who are numbers folks, they want the facts. That's a fact right there. One of the other reasons that we need to, as young people, take the steps and be civically engaged is because we're innovative. We understand what's going on, the scope of everything that's affecting us more than anyone else, as well as the fact that the decisions being made by whether it's a commissioner, mayor, president, those decisions are going to affect us more than anyone else because we're the youngest generation. Mary, I'm going to pass it to you.
That's beautifully said. said, thank you, Bree. Historically, young people do incite change. The civil rights movement was a hotbed on college campuses. It was the hottest topic. And historically, it is young people who bring change. It's young people at Tiananmen Square. It's young people all over the world saying that's enough and we can't live the rest of our lives this way. So that's why this is so important.
Absolutely. And I'll echo that just to say the unprecedented turnout that we have seen in this past 2018 midterm with young people alone, just that increase in voter turnout among young people, the increase that we're seeing with people being civically engaged. I'm hijacking your conversation now, as you can see. The increase in other ways of being civically engaged among young people, online activism, particularly during this time, is just so critical and driven by the technological age. You know, there's just so much to say for why this work is important. And thank you so much for hitting the key points. The civil rights movement, they have a stake, like young people have a stake in what is decided. Yes, just ditto, snap to everything that was just mentioned. Our next question is, what are some examples that you've seen, you know, given what we just talked about, what are some examples that you've seen of civic engagement, not just in general, but working here in South Florida? I think that's a really important question to ask, because you say, okay, yeah, civic engaged, but what comes of it and what does it look like when it works well?
So one thing that happened in 2018, besides having historic numbers of young people voting, which was amazing, was we also saw the passing of Amendment 4. Amendment 4 actually allowed people who had been convicted of a felony to be able to work towards regaining their voting status as returning citizens. Once they have completed all of their time, then they are again allowed any probation that's on their case or anything like that. Once all of that has been totally completed, then they've completed their debt to society and they can regain their eligibility to vote. Of course, this also has its own caveats. There was a lot of back and forth about whether or not returning citizens should also have to pay fines and fees, and that has been decided, and it has been decided that it is unconstitutional to decide whether a person can vote or not based on how much money they have. So that's amazing. But Amendment 4 was passed very largely because of the work that Floridians were doing. This was a strictly Florida problem. Obviously, there are other states that also do not return voting rights to returning citizens, but we had the conversation here and we had the vote here. And because so many people turned out to vote and we had such historic numbers and talked to so many people and knocked on so many doors, we got it passed overwhelmingly. We also had early voting sites added into some college campuses in Miami-Dade County. In 2018, the state of Florida struck down a law stating that early voting sites could not be on college campuses. So once we saw that other college campuses throughout the state were, you know, popping up early voting sites left and right, we said, hey, where's Miami-Dade? We need to vote too. And pushed and we pushed and we pushed with students from Miami-Dade College, and we pushed and pushed with community members, and we went to commission meetings, we went to budget hearings, and ultimately we got 3: Miami-Dade College North Campus, Miami-Dade College Kendall Campus, and FIU all have early voting sites now. Bree, do you have any others you want to add?
No, you killed it. And so let me just break down, at least for the college campuses, how it worked. Because I think for me, when I was a high school student especially, I thought to see something that was complicated. But no, it was literally myself and other folks from Engage, the Student Government Association from Miami-Dade College, coming together in some room, having a conversation and saying, hey, what's one of the biggest reasons why you don't vote? And students said access. You know, some people were like, I work full-time, and I go to school full-time, and I have a child. And so when it comes down to it, I don't have the time to stand in a line on election day and go vote. And so we came up with a list of demands. We went to the commission meeting, which is open to everyone, honestly. And about 10 to 12 people went up and spoke their 3 minutes about why they need an early voting site. And, you know, while the commission had to deliberate for 30 minutes after the commission meeting, they decided, yeah, and they allocated money from the budget. And so it was a short, simple, yet powerful process that allowed access to voting, created access to voting for a lot of people that didn't have it before.
Yeah. Were you going to say something in addition? Sorry.
No.
Yeah, some of our...
okay.
Go ahead, Bree.
No, I didn't have anything else to say. Go ahead, Mary.
Now, some of our biggest focuses are Magic City, which we've also seen called Tragic City. It's a moniker that has been built around the understanding that the Magic City development in Little Haiti might actually be incredibly tragic and bring a lot of really horrible effects for the people who currently live there. So we're organizing very extensively around that and trying to just ensure that the culture that currently exists in Little Haiti isn't erased because we want this Magic City sticker label on another part of Miami. And of course, we're constantly working with tons of partners and community members on climate activism throughout Miami-Dade, because we know we got about maybe 50 years on us before we're all getting to class in our floaties.
Yeah, and I just want to highlight some of the things that I'm hearing, because I think it's important to really hit these things home for our viewers who are high school students and young voters. Is I'm hearing civic engagement. You can go to a town hall meeting and attend a meeting. Go to a commission meeting, tune into them. It's super easy to do, especially now that like we're in a time where everything is virtual. Like just log in and take a listen. You also mentioned, Bree, you mentioned just getting together with groups of students who share like similar values or share your experience on your campus and saying, hey, this is something that needs to be heard. Let's raise our voice about it and let's find an avenue to talk about this. Those just three very simple things is tune in, get together, and learn. Like those three things are incredibly powerful ways to start. I also will say ditto to thinking that being civically engaged was so complicated. Throughout all of college, I was very, very bewildered by how do I make change here? How do I make a difference here? I'll just be kind to everybody. What am I doing? Where am I not going? Where is this? And it was because I thought it was incredibly complicated as well, when really it's not. I thank you so much for those answers, because it gives folks a place to start, whether that be volunteering with Achieve Miami and learning about your community that way, or volunteering with Engage Miami and taking action and being an advocate. So many ways. Anyway, our next question is, and this is the final question before we open up to Q&A, so we're good on time, is what are some ways I can make a difference? So thinking about all the things that we just discussed, what are some tangible ways I can start making a difference right now as a high school student?
So there are so many ways that you can get involved and start making a difference. I feel like a lot of them you just touched on, and you spoke so beautifully about them. It's a lot simpler than we think. So 2020, and as everyone knows, only happens every 10 years, is the census. And the census and the census is super important because it's how we make sure our communities are counted so that we can get the resources and money that we deserve, whether it be to use for schools or for transportation, literally for anything you can think about that government dollars can be spent on, the census can provide. And so we know in some communities, and for lots of different reasons, especially this year, people are weary of taking the census. A lot of folks believe that there is a citizenship question on the census this year, which is not the case. And so something that we're pushing people to do, no matter if you're 16, 17, or 18 years old, you can complete the census on behalf of your family. Honestly, at any age, you can complete the census on behalf of your family. So just check in with them, say, hey, did you complete the census this year? They say no, just find that piece of mail or go on 2020census.gov and fill it out for your household. The second thing is organizing and becoming a part of the movement through organizing. And what organizing is basically what we talked about as getting people together to use their collective voice to make a difference. And so you can organize a campaign, whether it's around better transportation or more affordable housing, or hey, we need real tangible steps for climate resilience in Miami-Dade County. Just getting your friends together and kind of hashing out your ideas is a great way to start. Advocacy, obviously, going to commission meetings. Honestly, I didn't know when they happen. I didn't know it was open to the public. It's as simple as going on miamidade.gov and realizing or figuring out when these elections or when these commission meetings, are happening so that you can tune in. And as Jessica was saying earlier, it's easier now more than ever because they're happening online. And they're actually allowing people to speak. Even though these are happening online, you can speak your 3 minutes right from your house. Have your research right here on your desk and say, hey, here are my 3 points. I just wanted to bring these up. I think these are things that you can do about these things. Last but not least, obviously, voting. There are so many different elections that are happening this year, and we're going to get into a little bit. You guys will get into it on engagemiami.vote's website. But basically, with all the elections that are happening this year, it's super important that you do your research, you figure out which candidates you feel have your best interest in mind, and you create a plan to vote. So knowing where or how you're going to vote, whether it's vote by mail, which we're suggesting, especially right now in these times, or planning to go vote early at one of the early voting locations in Miami-Dade County, or voting on election day, which we're yet to see if that will still be an option in November, but hopefully it will be, and hopefully society will be a lot safer by then. Marian, anything else to add?
Actually, Marian, before you go in, Brianna, we have a really diverse group of audience members here. For the high school students in 9th grade, 10th grade, who might not be 18 yet and are wondering, I can't vote right now, they can register early in the state of Florida,
Yeah.
correct? Okay.
Yeah. So at 16, you can pre-register to vote. All you are going to need is a Florida ID or license, and you can go right on this website, engagemiami.vote, that's in the chat. And it's literally the most intuitive, simplest system, simplest website to use to pre-register or register to vote or change anything on your voter registration. But for everyone on this call who is not yet of voting age, I do want to encourage you, look up nonprofits that represent issues that you care about, whether it's climate change or transportation. There are lots of awesome organizations that are doing lots of different things, whether it's a campaign, a protest, so on and so forth, to help basically make a difference in relation to these issues. And so that's the first step, I'd say. And then organizing, advocacy, volunteering, hopping on webinars like this one to learn more and to fill your brain with more education. Marian?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, as far as advocating, like both of you spoke on this, but this revolutionary idea that suddenly people can attend a commission meeting is like weird and awkward that it's revolutionary, but it's so invigorating because now I can tell all my friends, like, forget all your reality TV shows. This is the reality TV show you need to watch. Grab some popcorn, have your phone in hand. I think American Idol is the only place where you can like call in your vote, or was. But now you can call in and not just vote, you can give your opinion right on stage, right there, sitting on your couch with some popcorn.
And just as an example for how much this actually works, this type of activism works, we do things called call to actions, where there might be something on the agenda for the commission meeting, that we don't agree with. And for example, last week, there was an agenda item that basically was trying to put cameras in Wynwood and spend a lot of money from the budget to implement those cameras in Wynwood. And so especially what's going on with police brutality and stuff like that, we didn't feel like that was a good use of money. And we got together, I want to say maybe 50 people called in and said, hey, we don't agree with this. And it actually ended up on the Miami Herald. And it's because I think when young people, especially a lot of us, turn out and show up, they're more willing to listen because they're like, hey, this is a little rare. Or maybe we should listen to them because maybe they have a different perspective. And honestly, I feel like as a young person, oftentimes I'm discounted, but it actually helps us more so, is something that I've realized.
Yeah, for sure. Go ahead, Marian. Did you want to say something?
Yeah, we had a similar call to action just a couple of weeks ago where we were actually calling in about a $400 million prison that they were discussing possibly building in Miami-Dade County. And of course, because the mass incarceration of poor Black and brown people is pervasive in our entire country and affects us here in Miami so intensely, it was incredibly important to get another call to action. So what I'm actually gonna do is drop in the webinar chat a link so that people can get involved and actually receive info from us. So when we have call to actions, they'll be right on those calls.
So important. Thank you for sharing all of that. I also popped in the Miami-Dade County Board of Commissioner meeting calendar, and it right there, I have it bookmarked, and I look at that calendar just as I would look at anybody at my own calendar. You don't have to be that intense, but that's where you can find all the information you need to tune in. I'm looking at the time. I want to pop back over to sharing my screen and give the audience a visual because I know you have some really important information to share with us about upcoming 2020 elections. Could you let us know what elections are happening this year? What do we need to pay attention to?
Sure. So buckle up, everyone. In August, we have primary elections. And then in November, we have what's called general elections. So primary elections always, of course, happen before the general election, but sometimes they're used to narrow down what that general election will be. And other times, like we're about to learn, they will actually be used to possibly make the decision. So if you don't vote in that primary, you may not get a chance to vote again, which is like, I want to do it now. So you want to make sure that you're doing that. Now, in August and November, of course, in November, we have the presidential election. We had those primaries back in March. But in August and November, the primaries and generals that we'll be having are for our county, our state, and our U.S. House representatives. So if we can move on to the next slide, I'll dig into those a little bit more. Cool, thanks. So on August 18th, we're gonna be voting for our mayor and our 7 commissioners. Like I said, these are gonna be primary elections. When we have a nonpartisan primary election, what happens is, take for example, we have 7 of our 13 commissioners that we're choosing this year. So let's say seat 3 is one of those. If on August 18th, we have 5 people who are running for seat 3, everybody who lives in Commission District 3 will be voting for which person they prefer. If there are 5 people and one of them comes up to 50% plus 1 votes or more, then they automatically win and you don't have to vote on that again. But if nobody gets 50% plus 1 or more, so nobody clearly gets more than half, then we'll go into what's called a runoff election, which will happen in November. So runoff elections are in case there is not a clear, concise winner for a primary election, all right? Does that make sense? Cool. So when those runoff elections happen, oh boy, I lost my, there we go. When those runoff elections happen, you'll only be seeing 2 candidates. So those primaries are used to narrow down your entire selection to just 2 people. This August, we'll have those primary elections for our mayoral seats, as well as 7 of our 13 commissioners, which is a lot. Next, our state legislature. Just as a quick reminder, the way that our state legislature works is we have a bicameral legislature. We have 40 senators and 120 representatives. They're also split into districts the way that our county commissioners are. On August 18th, we will have those same primary elections for all 120 representatives and half of our senators. These people are the ones who spend their entire lives, their literal jobs is to research all the different bills that exist or all the different laws that exist in our Constitution, try and write new bills and reform laws, and research how those laws are affecting the way that we live on a day-to-day basis. So if something is up, those representatives better be on it. But it's up to us to elect the representatives who will be on it. Next, in the US House, they have the same setup. It's bicameral. It's your senators and your representatives. But what we have is what's called, oh my God, I forgot what the term is, but we have 435 representatives for the entire country, and that number stays consistent. It is extremely rare for that number to fluctuate at all. So what we do is we use the census, which Bree had mentioned earlier, to go through a process of what's called reapportionment. Apportionment is how each of those 435 representatives get proportioned between all 50 states, okay? And the few territories that have representatives. Currently in the state of Florida, we have 27 representatives. Based on our census material and our census data, we might have more. It's up to us to be able to count, to make sure that we're counted, and then ultimately when the US House reapportions all representatives, we'll get our due diligence. Now, these people are representing us at a national level, so we need them to be tip-top shape, right? Of course, as always, what's happening now is we're in campaign season. So basically what we're doing is we're sitting these people down for an interview, but they're not sitting down for an interview. They're standing up on a platform, speaking into a microphone, trying to motivate you to vote for them. But ultimately, it's a job interview. And we all are the supervisors. We all are the ones doing the hiring. So we need to vote in our best interests. There are also Miami Gardens municipal primaries happening August 18th, and there are other municipalities that will be voting a little bit later. But just to remind you all, those Dade County elections are extremely important. These people are making incredibly significant decisions for our lives on affordable housing, climate change, and how to handle emergencies that happen within the county, right? When we have hurricanes, the pandemic that just happened, that's all on them. That immediate response is up to them. Thanks, perfect. November 3rd is the big show. Jessica, you're on it. I couldn't think of the words and I just did a hand movement and you got it. On November 3rd, we know we're voting for the president. We know everybody's been talking about it since the last election pretty much, and everybody's got their opinions, but there's so much more than that. We're also going to be following up on those US House elections, the state House elections, and the state representative elections. So we're also going to be seeing municipal general elections in places like Cutler Bay, North Bay Village, Opa-locka, North Miami Beach. We'll have Miami Gardens runoff elections, and of course, any runoff elections that we need to hold for our county. If you all need to register to vote, we have an amazing, incredible website that is super intuitive, really easy. You're just gonna go to engagemiami.vote, just as it was dropped in the chat. And literally every step of the way, you're just being asked a question and responding to it until you get to your entire form that you're going to fill out. If you need to make changes, if you need to register to vote for the first time, you can do all of that there. If you need to double check, if you need to replace your card, you can do all of that right at engagemiami.vote.
Oh no, too early. Okay. I spoke to our follow-up survey a little too early. Hang tight, everyone. It is now, thank you so much for that very thorough explanation. I'm just gonna stop sharing here, knowing that we do have that link in the chat to go to engagemiami.vote. And I want to open it up now at this time to Q&A. I know that we only have about 15 minutes left, but if folks are okay, we have a bunch of attendees and 2 questions so far, but if we have additional questions, we can certainly extend the time by around 5 minutes, if that's okay. Tazi, do you want to open up the Q&A for us and start us off?
First off, I wanted to thank you, wonderful ladies, for joining us and sharing all these amazing things that you're doing. So first question was from Mia. She said, you both spoke about the lack of successes in minority schools. She wants to know, what has you and your organization done in order to help a positive construction of schools in the less fortunate communities?
So I'd say one of the best things that we do, while we are not an organization that completely focuses on education, we do work with Power U, that is an organization that completely focuses on education and filling that gap. For us, in terms of what we do though, I'd say us going into high schools and having these same types of conversations, hosting workshops and different events where we're having these conversations and answering questions in a completely neutral environment really does. I think also the fact that people don't feel, I guess, worried to talk to us. They don't feel insecure. They're like, hey, you are here to help me, and I know you're not going to judge. And so thank you so much for the materials that you're providing and the conversations that you're having with us. So I think that's
beautiful. I also think, like, you know, a lot of it is just like being a more informed individual, and like, I love what you're doing. You're really advocating for it. So I think like just making, you know, everyone a little bit more aware, and we can slowly start to drive that up. I'm going to ask a question from Sarah. And Sarah asked us, hold on. Sarah asked us, so I actually really enjoyed this question because it, you know, I think it makes us responsible for our actions in our local community. She said, many students are going out of college outside of Miami or out of state. So what's some things they need to do in order to leave, like, before they head out of college, so that they need to vote? Because, like, I think a lot of what happens is, you know, you go to college and then you never register to vote, and then you don't understand that you have to vote for like where your house, you know. So what do you recommend that they do?
So that's actually technically your choice as a citizen. You as a student are, if you are living on campus and you are in a totally different place. For example, I mentioned earlier, my brother lived in Atlanta. He went to Georgia Tech. He still lives there. Throughout his entire college experience, he had the choice to either vote in Florida, in Miami-Dade County, in Hialeah, or in Atlanta, in his district, in his county, and in his municipality. In the state of Florida, you can technically be registered in 2 states, but you can only use your vote once per election cycle. So that's a little bit tricky. You want to make sure you know where you want your vote counted, and that's where you're going to be voting.
Okay, good to know. Thank you.
If you're not careful, you might be committing a felony, but
don't carry the Marion. They won't make the mistake.
yes.
So, as Marion said, okay, so every state has different voter registration laws. And so I think Florida actually has some of the most lenient laws. We have no resident requirement. So as long as you've lived in Florida a week and you have a place where you can send your voter registration form, even if you don't have a home on file yet or anything in the state system, you can still register to vote. And so what I'd say for everyone that's going away to college in another state is look up what state's requirements are for voting, what information they require, and just start getting it together now, and maybe even register to vote online if you can, if you're old enough, just to get that process started. Because there is, you do have to register to vote 29 days prior to an election in order to vote in that election. And so what happens is a lot of people do get to campus in the fall and they don't know that fact, and then they don't register until maybe October, November, or December, and they're not able to vote in that election. That's what happened to me in college. I actually went to college in Massachusetts. And so I just do that research now, start putting the materials together.
And you have a very supportive website, so like please make sure everybody else goes on that website in case they need anything. Also, Sarah did ask, she said, because you were talking about the commission meetings, she wanted to know, how should someone prepare for these meetings? Any tips that you would want to give us, just to make us, well informed if we decide to attend them?
And make a comment, particularly.
Yes.
For sure. So one, you'd want to find the agenda for that meeting. Little to say, sometimes the language used in the agendas aren't the most easy for typical everyday citizens to understand. So you're going to want to find that agenda a bit ahead of time. Take your time reading it, kind of understand what they're going to be talking about in that meeting, what they're considering changing in the community. And then once you understand that, maybe do research into why, what are the decisions that my city or county have made prior to this. And why are they making this decision now? Is it something, and then you want to think about, is it something that you agree with or not? And if not, figure out why, find research to support your why, and then use that research to create your 3-minute comment, which usually I like to write mine down on my notes on my phone and just have it right there, read from it, and not like a robot, but read from it so that I make sure I'm hitting all the points that I want to hit in that 3 minutes.
Talking points are like my fave. Every time I receive a call to action from our advocacy organizers that engage, I'm like, what are our talking points? Tell me right away. It's really, really helpful, like Bree said, just to have those quick little notes that you can refer back to and be like, oh, right, I'm really upset about this. Hey, this, and that. Keeping your calm is really nice. They're stressed, we're stressed. It's very tense. Keeping it light and breezy is nice. And yeah, I'd say that's about it.
I also think, like, when you write things down, just like when you go to the grocery store or something and you're really hungry and then you buy everything and you say everything and you don't get what you actually need to out of, your intention, or the supermarket, so I think, like, in this case, it is interesting. Are they able to pull up the agenda ahead of time? Like, if I wanted to know what was going to be discussed, because that would be the best way to approach this, right? To make myself very informed on the topics and to break down the material. But thank you so much. I think also this is Mia. Mia's giving us some great questions here. She wants to know, what has your nonprofit done to combat our current social injustices that's happened in the past as well as currently? And I know you kind of briefly touched up on it and I sent the link, but if you can, like, give us some more.
So one of the things that we're doing, well, in terms of physical things that we've been doing a lot of work with the Dream Defenders to help plan a lot of the protests that are happening around Miami-Dade County, and to help do digital organizing and digital blasts to make sure that people in our networks and beyond understand, why these protests are happening, where, when, and feel safe, know what to do to prepare for a protest as well. So that's definitely something we've been doing. I'd say another thing that we've been doing a lot of is having conversations about possibly divesting from the police. So a lot of money, especially in Miami-Dade County, a lot of money from our budget does go toward the police. And so we're trying to figure out how to advocate for some of that money to be divested and put into different things, whether it's, for social justice or social services in place of the police, and increasing those resources, I suppose.
Good. Thank you so much. I also, somebody wrote in the chat, but I want to make sure we do understand because it is a little confusing at first, especially for newer voters. What's the difference of voting by mail or from home compared to an absentee ballot?
That's a good one.
Well, an absentee ballot used to be what it was called when people who lived outside of the country or people in the armed forces who were outside of the country, when they finally earned their right to vote, which didn't really happen that long ago, by the way, as well as young people, we haven't really been able to vote that long. When they earned their right to vote, we opened up what was called absentee ballots. Now these are called vote by mail, and this is actually a convenience that is available to anyone in the state of Florida. And there are actually other states that automatically enroll people for vote by mail and send ballots straight to people's homes, and everybody just votes at home. We have 3 options here in Florida. We can vote on election day, and if you don't want to risk coronavirus and see other people, you can vote early. Early voting sites are open up to 2 weeks before an election day, and they are open 12 hours a day. And I went most recently in March, and it was literally less than 2 minutes from the moment I took the first step in to the moment I took my last step out and got my sticker. So it's incredibly easy. Vote by mail, though, is the absolute easiest because you can just go online really quickly and ask for it. You can get up to 2 years worth of elections sent to your home. It arrives, up to a month. I've gotten ballots a month before an election. I'm like, whoa, wait a second. I'm not ready yet, guys. But it allows you to go ahead and research everything that you want to look up. It's incredibly easy to get it, to ask for it. And then once you receive your ballot, you can do all of your research, fill it out at your leisure. I actually prefer to take mine to the supervisor of elections right in my county to turn it in. But the usual thing is people just pop it back in their mail and it goes. It's paid postage, so you don't even have to worry about spending a dime. You don't need to waste gas. You don't need to buy stamps. You don't need anything but a pen and your brain to think. And you need your values very deeply aligned.
I love that. It's like, I know that sometimes there's like a discrepancy of like, if I mail this, will my vote be counted? Does it matter? And I like what you said about that second part of taking it to your, the electoral, so that you can actually physically, if you need to know that you turned it in, you should do that.
There are also online resources where you can double check what part of the process your vote is on. So to see if your vote already has been counted.
Okay, great.
One reminder for vote by mail, you want to make sure that your signature is exactly the same signature as your ID. Otherwise, your vote may not count.
Oh, important to know. Thank you. I think those are all the questions I saw.
Awesome.
And I wanted to thank you so much for helping us and talking to us today.
Yeah. And thank you, Tazi, for facilitating that Q&A portion. I just want to, now I will show the follow-up survey link. So all of you can get your community service hour for, I apologize, to get your community service hour for attending this College Empower Hour. In that follow-up survey, again, will be, there's a question where you can express interest in getting involved with Engage Miami. And I just want to thank everyone for attending. Thank you, Marianne and Brianna, for being here and for, you know, gracing us with all of your election and voting wisdom. Again, this is a particularly exciting College Empower Hour for me, as someone who's really into this stuff as well. And for all of the young folks out there who might be, you know, leaving this feeling like, oh my gosh, there's like a whole world of decisions being made right under my nose, and I had no idea about this, and I'm feeling overwhelmed. It's okay. And while those decisions are being made under your nose all the time, they're only under your nose if you don't pay attention. And so pay attention, get involved with Engage, continue being involved with Achieve. We love you here, and you learn a ton about your community through this organization. Truly, yeah, there is power in people. There's power in young people. You have a stake in what is being said. You do not, I always tell, in former work, I would always tell people this, and I'll tell you this now, is if you do not speak up for yourself and your values and your beliefs, someone else will speak for you. And I think that everything that we discussed today just kind of illuminates all the ways where you can make your voice heard and make your beliefs and values shine in our democracy, and all these inspirational words, and et cetera, et cetera. And I'm going to just leave this screen up here, but thank you so much, Engage Miami. Thank you, everyone. You are free to go if you choose.